Everyone needs to see Starship Troopers. It's just a great movie. We're doing our part, whether you've seen it a million times or are just curious what the hype's about. We've got everything you need to know about this satirical sci-fi classic.
A satirical slap in Heinlein's face, a love triangle that doesn't exist, and a seriously gutting happy ending. Maybe the bugs were the real heroes after all. Most filmmakers take on book adaptations because they enjoy the source material. That wasn't the case for Paul Verhoeven when he agreed to direct Starship Troopers. He interpreted Robert Heinlein's novel as ideologically fascist and pro-war, and since Verhoeven grew up in Nazi-occupied Holland during World War II, it's understandable why he lambasts these ideas. In an interview with Digital Spy, the director explained that he wanted to make a movie about a fascist utopia where citizens aren't aware of what was really going on. In the film, Casper Van Dien's Johnny Rico and his mobile infantry unit are happy to risk their lives on the battlefield, despite how they're viewed by their higher-ups.
Fresh meat for the grinder, eh?
While Starship Troopers is mostly a cautionary tale about totalitarianism, the movie boasts a cast of likable characters who are easy to root for. If you overlook their enjoyment of blasting through bugs and how they blindly follow a questionable regime, the heroes are regular people. This drives home the idea that everyday folks easily become spokes in the wheel of an authoritarian state if they don't hold their leaders accountable. Starship Troopers isn't exactly subtle in how it skewers fascism. The film is littered with Nazi imagery and nods to German propaganda films from World War II. The opening shot was pinched from Leni Riefenstahl's infamous propaganda film Triumph of the Will, and the officers' uniforms are reminiscent of the Nazi SS and Gestapo. While these visuals were included to get the film's point across to the audience, Verhoeven's crew also appreciated the aesthetic appeal of the uniforms. According to an interview with Entertainment Weekly, screenwriter Ed Neumeyer claimed, "Germans made the best-looking stuff." This appealed to the film's art directors and costume designers, with Verhoeven adding that the goal was to deconstruct propaganda films, giving the viewers some food for thought regarding the bigger issues. Verhoeven said, "I tried to seduce the audience to join Starship Troopers society, but then ask, what are you really joining up for?" Hollywood likes a good romance story, especially if it involves a love triangle, increasing drama and conflict between the characters. Starship Troopers was going down that route until test audiences reacted poorly to the subplot where Denise Richards' Carmen couldn't decide if she wanted to be with Rico or Patrick Muldoon's Xander Barkalow. While a love triangle is teased, with Rico often acting jealous, Starship Troopers is more interested in Carmen's personal qualities than her love life. She's depicted as a smart, career-driven pilot who's good at her job and doesn't need to be romantically involved with anyone to be interesting.
I think I'm gonna go career. I want to command a ship of my own, and you know?
According to The Guardian, Richards described Carmen as a strong woman and a great role model, noting that the lack of a romantic resolution for her character was the best decision. Young love is messy and everyone gets their heart broken at some point. If there's any message about love inside Starship Troopers, besides fascists loving war, it's that there's no such thing as living happily ever after. We all clearly noticed the room full of naked people, regardless of what age we saw this movie, but we may not have appreciated the subtext until later. There's an argument to be made that the co-ed shower scene in Starship Troopers isn't necessary, designed to incite thirst and nothing more. Let's not forget that Verhoeven directed Basic Instinct and Showgirls immediately prior to this film. However, this scene isn't as gratuitous as it might first appear. The main group of recruits discuss their reasons for enlisting in the military. One of them wants to escape the farm life and see the universe, and another has political aspirations. The scene highlights the camaraderie between the troopers, and at no point do they showcase any physical desire toward each other. This scene reinforces the idea that all of the soldiers are regarded as equals, quite progressive for a fascist military-industrial complex. Starship Troopers is considered so refreshing in its portrayal of gender politics, it passes the Bechdel test several times over. Starship Troopers has a nearly all-white main cast, and most of them are good-looking. But the movie's lack of diversity was certainly intentional. Verhoeven spoke directly to the idea when talking about casting Van Dien as Rico. Mark Wahlberg and Matt Damon auditioned, but I was looking for the prototype of blonde, white, and arrogant. And Casper Van Dien was so close to the images I remembered from Leni Riefenstahl's films. That said, it's worth noting that there's more diversity in the original novel. The book's lead character is a Filipino man named Juan. While this aspect was overlooked for artistic reasons, it still makes Starship Troopers one of the many Hollywood blockbusters to have whitewashed people of color from the original source material. At the same time, commenting on fascism wasn't the only reason for casting 90s heartthrobs like Van Dien, Richards, Neil Patrick Harris, and Jake Busey in the main roles. According According to Screen Slate, Verhoeven wanted actors who looked wholesome, innocent, and classically beautiful, further enhancing the notion that war makes good people do rotten things. While it can be argued that adding more diversity could have similarly illustrated this point, there's no denying that Starship Troopers has clear intentions.
Let me tell you something. I'm from Buenos Aires, and I say kill them all!
It's no secret that Starship Troopers is a subversive movie. It was Verhoeven's intention from the very beginning to satirize both the original pro-war novel as well as the increasingly imperialistic nature of the United States. To that end, the movie made some key changes from the book that seek to show how evil the military-run government really is underneath. One of the biggest examples of this is the Buenos Aires plotline, which can easily be taken at face value until you rewatch it as an adult. The mysterious enemy race of aliens known as the Arachnids are seemingly capable of hurling asteroids across vast distances of space to attack human targets. So when an asteroid decimates the Earth city of Buenos Aires, where Rico's parents live, it sets humanity on a bloodthirsty path of revenge against the aliens.
The only good bug is a dead bug.
Yet the filmmakers hint at more going on with this event than the characters would make it seem. Many have speculated that the destruction of Buenos Aires was a false flag attack by the human government to justify an invasion of the arachnid homeworld, Klendathu. The only information about the arachnids' capability to send asteroids towards Earth comes from the fascist military government, which casts doubt on the credibility of their claims. Humanity's militaristic society does everything it can to paint the arachnids as the most heartless creatures imaginable. Multiple propaganda scenes exist solely to degrade, devalue, and disrespect the alien foe as part of humanity's war effort. But how true are the claims? Fans know that Verhoeven intentionally made the film seem like a piece of propaganda, portraying a utopian fascist society that to audiences in 1997 would look absurdly nightmarish. Because of the satirical nature and propagandistic tone, it's no surprise that the characters of the film are so merciless to their enemies. In one scene, we see children on Earth squishing real-life cockroaches. This is framed as a patriot act for the war effort, symbolizing humanity crushing the arachnids. But it becomes clear that the bugs are largely misunderstood creatures, forced into fighting a defensive war against aggressive human colonization. The end of Starship Troopers shows just how victimized the bugs actually are. After capturing the massive brain bug, Carl Jenkins, played by Neil Patrick Harris, is able to feel its emotions and relay them to the army of troopers.
It's afraid. It's afraid!
While the end of the movie features all the explosive action that fans enjoy, the first half of Starship Troopers focuses on how these attractive young humans are trained for war. Rico, along with his friends Carmen, Carl, and Dizzy, are all taught by a roster of intimidating instructors who have experienced combat firsthand. On first viewing, these scenes are overshadowed by the love rectangle between Rico, Dizzy, Carmen, and Xander. But it isn't until revisiting Starship Troopers as an adult that the depressing nature of the film's teacher-student dynamic becomes apparent. The instructors fought against the arachnids, suffering horrific physical disfigurements in combat. Michael Ironside's John Rochek is missing an arm, and the biology teacher, played by Rue McClanahan, is blind and heavily scarred. These physical conditions foreshadow the fates of many students who will go off to war. Starship Troopers seems to have a happy ending, with our heroes defeating their enemies and going off to successful military careers. But thanks to the film's satirical edge, this excitement feels hollow. Rico's character arc throughout the film shows us just how sad of an ending this really is. At the start, Rico is a conflicted character who is unsure of his place in the military machinery. He joins the mobile infantry, but not out of any sense of patriotic duty. While it's true that his military service will guarantee him citizenship, his desire to continue a romantic relationship with Carmen is what draws him into the war. He shows compassion and conscientiousness during his training, as well as deep regret when he directly contributes to the death of a fellow soldier during an exercise gone wrong. It's not until the invasion of Klendathu, after his parents are killed in the Buenos Aires attack, that Rico drastically changes into a killing machine. Starship Troopers ends with an in-universe propaganda video encouraging new recruits to join the military so they can be heroes like Rico.
Come on, you ape! You wanna live forever!
For a man as initially open-minded as Rico, this is an unhappy ending. He is now truly just a cog in the war machine.
From kisses to farewells, there are a few scenes that didn't make the final cut of Starship Troopers. In the world of Starship Troopers, it's only the jock-like meatheads who end up on the front lines of the intergalactic war between humankind and the alien bugs who threaten their existence. As members of the mobile infantry, they're the first to die as they fight tooth and nail to earn their citizenship and fair treatment in Federation space. While the smart ones become pilots and the psychics join military intelligence, Johnny Rico falls quickly into the infantry. And it's obvious why. The theatrical cut makes it clear that jocks are better built for the infantry, and thus Johnny is an obvious candidate alongside his sporting friends Dizzy and Ace. But a deleted scene called High School Lawn goes a step further, implying that academics are Johnny's strong suit. After Johnny does poorly on a math exam, he confides in his girlfriend Carmen, who tells him that she likes him despite his intellectual limitations. As the two kiss, Johnny asks why she refuses to make love to him, to which she replies that she's waiting for the right time. This scene was only axed at the very end of post-production, but it would have played within the first 15 minutes to help establish the romance between Johnny and Carmen. The love affair between Johnny and Carmen is tumultuous at best. At the height of their romance, they dream of a future together before enlisting in the Federation. Tragically, it didn't take long before Carmen breaks Johnny's heart, deeming the distance and their differing career paths as too much to handle. But before they ever enlist, they're high school sweethearts with some serious Shakespearean parental issues. In a quick deleted scene deemed transporter, Johnny attempts to convince Carmen to let him go home with her after the semester, but she swiftly shuts him down. Though it doesn't last long, this moment gives us some extra context regarding the apparently forbidden nature of their relationship. It's revealed that Carmen's family dislikes the Ricos for not being Federation citizens. Though Johnny's parents are wealthy and ultimately have no need for service or citizenship, their status as non-citizens is enough for Carmen's parents to look down on them. Had this moment been included in the film, it would have no doubt contributed to Johnny's decision to join the mobile infantry. As it stands, he already enlists to impress Carmen and eventually earn his own citizenship. So the added pressure of further impressing her parents might have elaborated on his increasingly complicated motivations.
You're the reason why I signed up, or Denise is the reason why I signed up.
One of the best scenes in all of Starship Troopers is the iconic Klendathu drop, which is the first time we really lay eyes on the arachnids who threaten humanity's survival. In all the increasing chaos, Johnny Rico is trapped, only to be rescued by his former high school teacher, who inducts him into the Roughnecks. Since the invasion is a disaster, the Federation mistakenly reports Johnny among the ever-growing list of casualties, which devastates Carmen from afar. Though she had already broken his heart, Carmen is still in love with Johnny, and she struggles with that reality in a deleted scene named Xander Consoles Carmen. Preying upon her vulnerable state, her superior Xander enters her quarters to console her, only to creepily confess that he's actually in love with her. Rather than reject his off-putting advances, Carmen kisses Xander, and the scene ends implying that they sleep together. After Carmen and Xander save the Roughnecks from an arachnid horde on the mysterious bug world of Planet P, they take the crew aboard where Carmen learns that Johnny is alive. However, tragedy has struck the young Johnny once again, as his lover and former classmate Dizzy didn't make it out alive. Naturally, a funeral service is held in Dizzy's honor, with their old high school buddy turned military intelligence officer Carl Jenkins in attendance. In a scene called Carmen's Cabin, which is set before the memorial, Carmen prepares for the funeral as Xander interrupts her with irritating questions that quickly get more personal. Instead of offering his condolences for her lost classmate, Xander badges her about her relationship with Johnny, who is not as dead as she had previously thought. Offering little in response, Carmen is unsure of how she feels about the infantryman, but seems to have reignited the torch that Johnny previously held for her. Like the previous scene, all this moment does is make Xander look more and more like a creep. His insecure prodding and frustrating presence make us hate him all the more, to the point where we couldn't care less when his brain is eaten by the brain bug. This scene also adds very little to Carmen's arc other than her apparently rejuvenated interest in Johnny.
Isn't that hilarious?
During the final act, Johnny and Carmen are reunited after Johnny gets a strange urge to travel beneath Planet P's surface while the battle between the Federation and the bugs rages outdoors. Down below, he stumbles upon a bug stronghold where the brain bug has killed Xander. With Carmen next on the menu, Johnny, Ace, and Watkins arrive just in time to save her and blow the cave to smithereens. Though Watkins doesn't make it, the others live to see another day. In the final moments of Starship Troopers, the brain bug is captured and Carl reveals that the creature is afraid. Having won the battle, Carmen remarks that all might be fine in the end. In an extended version of the same scene called Last Kiss, Carmen lays a friendly one on Carl. Soon after, she and Johnny share a final romantic moment themselves where they also kiss, picking up where they left off. Though this is a nice note to end on given their tortured romance, the removal of this blissful moment is almost necessary. Not only would the rekindling of the romance feel a bit cliché, but their decision to remain close friends reflects how much they've both grown, and that they understand and respect the other's choices moving forward. Beyond the officially released deleted scenes, there exists another cut of Starship Troopers, one mentioned scarcely online with only a few photos to prove its existence. This work print was as close to the final cut of the film as Paul Verhoeven got before switching things up for the theatrical release. This version includes nearly every deleted scene, with the only exception being the transporter sequence near the beginning. With the runtime not much longer than the 2 hours and 9 minutes of the theatrical, the work print added just shy of 10 minutes of additional content total. Apart from the aforementioned deleted scenes, One notable addition includes a brief peek at Xander, who stumbles in the background behind Carmen as she talks with Johnny over video call. Though they aren't a romantic item, it foreshadows Carmen's eventual fling with her co-pilot, which only causes Johnny more pain. Along with some added battle shots that lengthen the war, Neil Patrick Harris gets a few more moments of screen time, including a line where Carl mentions that it's good to see Johnny and Carmen again after all this time. Evidently, test audiences weren't crazy about the love triangle, and after the removal of all those scenes, other clips were axed soon after.
Starship Troopers is considered to be the third of Paul Verhoeven's so-called Triple Dutch trilogy, following up the hit sci-fi satires RoboCop and Total Recall. Those films similarly mix gleefully provocative imagery and brutality with off-putting, over-the-top screen programming to drive their themes home, and Starship Troopers is no different. The fascist propaganda seen on its screens aren't meant to serve so much as commercials as they are on-demand information that bears an uncanny resemblance to the internet, or at least the promise the internet held in its 1997 infancy. It makes some sense, as the nascent World Wide Web held the promise of allowing media consumers to move from topic to topic with the click of a cursor. If you look hard enough, you might also detect faint traces of the always online future to come. The ability to focus on top news could be seen as predicting eventual social media websites like Twitter. Of course, the internet aspect of the movie's opening montage pales in comparison to its fascist overtones. The sequence draws directly from Triumph of the Will, the notorious Leni Riefenstahl Nazi propaganda film, complete with eagle imagery. As Verhoeven, who grew up under Nazi occupation, told Entertainment Weekly in 1997, when the soldiers look at the camera and say, "I'm doing my part," that's from Riefenstahl. We copied it. Some images from Starship Troopers are pause-worthy because of what we know, others because of what we never will. Case in point, the biology teacher from the high school attended by Starship Troopers protagonists Johnny Rico, Carmen Ibanez, and Carl Jenkins definitely has something going on that warrants closer inspection. She only appears in a single scene, but that scene is impossible to ignore. Rue McClanahan of Golden Girls fame plays the teacher who prowls around her classroom as Rico and Carmen dissect an Arkelian sand beetle. She extols the virtues of the alien arachnids and proclaims the foolishness inherent in any notion of human superiority. While the scene mostly serves as a crash course in alien biology for the audience, it's impossible to look away from the teacher, whose burn-like scars around her eyes suggest that she's been blinded. Between her aesthetic and her ideology, it would be fascinating to learn more about her backstory. If nothing else, we just want to keep the movie paused on McClanahan long enough to write our own fan fiction backstory for her character. Rico and his fellow mobile infantry aspirants are trained by Sergeant Zim, played with over-the-top intensity by Clancy Brown. His drill sergeant characterization is undoubtedly familiar to anyone who's seen a war movie before, but Brown, along with Jake Busey, also delivers one of the film's most memorable images, one that deftly subverts expectations and drives home just how brutal boot camp can be in a militaristic dystopia.
Lay down on this, son. It helps. I know.
Busey's mobile infantry recruit, Ace Levy, is practicing throwing knives, but is having some trouble with it. Frustrated, he demands to know why the skill is necessary to learn, saying that most combat in this particular future is fought using nuclear weaponry, which merely requires the push of a button. Zim, in response, commands Ace to put his hand against the nearby wall. Ace clearly has no interest in doing so, but reluctantly follows the order. In most movies, the payoff to this setup would be for Zim to throw a knife and intentionally miss Ace's hand, or to hit something else with the knife instead. But not in Starship Troopers. Zim throws the knife directly into Ace's palm, pinning it to the wall, then calmly walks over and gives a simple, iconic explanation.
The enemy cannot push a button if you disable his hand.
It's a classic moment that helps set the entire film's tone. In stark contrast to the shower scene, the tattoo scene doesn't have any deeper thematic meaning, but it's no less an iconic image, one that stood out in the original trailer and features a tattoo design that has since been used in a ton of Starship Troopers merchandise. It's actually that very tattoo design that makes this moment pause-worthy. Think about it. Why do 4 mobile infantry soldiers who have just joined a fighting force that deals exclusively in ground warfare have tattoos that say "Death from Above"? It's particularly confusing when you consider that right before they get these tattoos, Rico gets in a fight with Xander Barkalow, an officer of the fleet, which does hit the enemy from above.
Get it, Rico! Mobile infantry and fleet don't mix.
In fact, the tattoo design is a relic of Robert Heinlein's book, so much so that it doesn't actually fit in Verhoeven's movie. Verhoeven had nothing but contempt for his source material, to the extent that his adaptation was specifically designed to satirize it. He changed a ton, including the fact that in the book, the mobile infantry drop onto enemy planets from orbit, hence the slogan. The tattoos don't actually make sense for the movie, but they look really cool. One of the many changes made by Verhoeven in his adaptation of Starship Troopers was to combine the character of teacher John Dubois with the character of Lieutenant Rajak, leader of the mobile infantry platoon known as Rajak's Roughnecks. This choice makes sense. In the book, Dubois sends Rico a letter revealing that he's a former mobile infantry soldier, so it's simply economical to fuse them together. This also allows the movie to provide a fantastic narrative moment in which the audience realizes that the teacher has become the soldier. When Rajak is still in the classroom, it's clear that he's lost his left hand and most of his left forearm. No attempt is made to hide this, so when Rico, Ace, and Dizzy join the Roughnecks and prepare to meet their infamous lieutenant, the close-up on a cybernetic left arm instantly tells us everything we need to know. It's obvious that the lieutenant is Rajak before we even see Michael Ironside's face again, and his seamless transition from respected educator to battle commander slyly transmits the propagandistic idea that Rico and the Roughnecks are the good guys. Anything that conveys that much information in a single shot is absolutely worth pausing for. Starship Troopers might be a satire, but that doesn't mean it's not also a big-budget sci-fi blockbuster. Sometimes, over the course of the movie, you just want to pause to get a better look at some of the creature designs. The coolest-looking arachnid is undoubtedly the tanker bug, which first burst out of the ground during a Roughneck mission to Tango Urilla. Massive in size, it sports sinister green eyes and a built-in flamethrower for incinerating pesky human soldiers. If you pause the movie as it emerges in the desert sun, you can get a good look at the attention to detail that went into creating it. It's clearly alien, but also recognizable as an insect. Most people probably don't love the idea of a gargantuan beetle that spews fire at them, but that's kind of the point. In the third act of Starship Troopers, we meet another kind of arachnid, the brain bug, which resembles nothing so much as a gigantic brain with eyes and pincers. Its capture serves as the big climax of the movie, representing the first definitive victory for humans over bugs, along with a potential wealth of new information on how to fight them more effectively. Not only is this moment pause-worthy because of another incredible alien design, but also because it marks the reappearance of Carl, who has been largely absent from the middle section of the film. He's clearly refined his latent psychic powers in the years since he, Rico, and Carmen were last together.
It's afraid. It's afraid!
This, of course, causes everybody to cheer wildly and signals a clear triumph of good over evil, since in this case, the good guys are fascists, and there's nothing a fascist loves more than making somebody else afraid. Before the humans' triumphant capture of the brain bug, it manages to take out one of the movie's major characters. Xander Barkalow is first seen as Rico's high school sports rival and immediately hits on Carmen. While Rico ends up beating him in the big game, Xander gets the girl, becoming Carmen's pilot instructor during her fleet training and ultimately a good deal more than that. Xander is kind of irritating, and as an audience, we're trained to stand behind our protagonist when he gets himself into a love triangle. However, Xander ultimately proves to be a decent enough guy, and Rico moves on to sleep with Dizzy. So everything resolves itself pretty easily. Still, if one of these characters had to get gray matter sucked out of their head by the brain bug's feeding spike, Xander would probably have been the audience's first choice. It's difficult to forget this moment after seeing chunks of Xander's brain move through a semi-transparent tube and into the brain bug as it chows down greedily. The worst part is when it's all gone and the brain bug makes a sound like it's sucking on an empty straw. Xander's wide-eyed, hollowed-out head is an image that tends to stick around in the mind. Starship Troopers is particularly interested in the implications of young people becoming soldiers. The journeys of Rico, Carmen, and Carl happen mostly separately, but we still see them as kids in high school before we see them as soldiers or military officers. We can see the changes they endure. By the movie's conclusion, Carl is a leader in military intelligence, Carmen is a fleet captain, and Rico is commanding the Roughnecks, a platoon that suddenly includes several brand new recruits. Before his first mission as a lieutenant on Planet P, Rico looks over his newest soldiers, most of whom appear significantly younger than the protagonists were when they began training. In the propaganda videos throughout the film, we've seen kids dressing up as soldiers or smashing ordinary bugs in the street to help the war effort. This moment takes that notion to its logical extreme, as the depleted Roughnecks are given literal children to refill their ranks. In the final sequence of the movie, Rico can be seen repeating Rajak's words to egg his soldiers on.
Come on, you weak! You wanna live forever!
The message is clear. The kids are going to keep going into the meat grinder, punctuated by the final words that flash across the screen. They'll keep fighting, and they'll win.
Paul Verhoeven's 1997 sci-fi epic Starship Troopers, based on the 1959 Robert Heinlein novel, is a singularly crazy film with the kind of well-developed futuristic society that you'd expect from the director of RoboCop. Set hundreds of years in the future, the film follows Johnny Rico through his decision to enlist in the Mobile Infantry, a highly trained, heavily armed unit on the front line of a galactic war with the Bugs, a hideous and dangerous alien species bent on the destruction of humanity. Johnny follows his girlfriend Carmen and his best friend Carl into military service, and is also joined by Isabel Dizzy Flores, whose unrequited feelings for Johnny complicate matters. The film is memorable for many reasons, from its attractive young cast, to its intensely violent battle scenes, to its frequent use of military recruitment commercials that always end with the phrase,
"Would you like to know more?"
These commercials serve to illustrate the extreme ideology of this future world in which military service is all but compulsory. Another frequent refrain of the commercials, "Service guarantees citizenship," implies that veterans are not just given favored status in society, but are the only ones who have the kinds of rights that we take for granted. The implications of this are laid out nicely in one of the movie's most eye-popping scenes, although you could be forgiven for missing it. Early in the film, a mobile infantry recruit named Kitty, with aspirations of becoming a journalist, playfully questions his fellow recruits, including an uncooperative Rico, as to their reasons for enlisting. Their answers are quite revealing, but their focus may have been elsewhere, because the scene is also revealing in another, more literal sense. The scene takes place in a communal shower, where all of the recruits, both male and female, are present and completely naked. Kitty's line of questioning evokes a variety of responses. One recruit simply wants to get off the family farm. Another has political aspirations.
Oh, I'm going into politics, and you gotta be a citizen for that, so here I am.
Still another was accepted to a prestigious university, but couldn't afford the tuition. And yet another wants to have children. And it's a lot easier to get a license if you serve. Finally, Kitty lands on Rico, who refuses to reveal his motivations. But Dizzy won't let him off the hook, telling the other recruits that he enlisted because of a girl. It's interesting to note that the entire vibe of the scene is chummy but not flirty. And there's a clear implication that all recruits are equal in each other's eyes. It might be the mark of a truly egalitarian, enlightened society were it not for a couple of the answers sprinkled in among those that one might hear today. There are many active duty service members who have their eyes on a career in the military, or who saw service as a great way to pay for school, or to gain life experience outside their hometowns. But the subtext of the responses involving citizenship and the licensing requirement to have children is plain, and it lines up nicely with Verhoeven's subversive take on Heinlein's novel. These scenes are loaded with irony. Anyone who has seen RoboCop likely understood what Verhoeven was going for here. He was satirizing what he saw as a black and white authoritarian worldview, lifting dialogue almost verbatim from Heinlein's novel, which lionized voluntary military service and the concept of duty to society.
We talked about the veterans, how they took control and imposed the stability that has lasted for generations since.
By subtly shifting the tone to give the material a satirical bent, Verhoeven effectively flipped the source material on its head. In a 2014 interview with Empire, Verhoeven admitted that he had to have screenwriter Ed Neumeyer relate to him the story of Heinlein's work, having found it too boring to read himself, and he confirmed his intent. The idea I wanted to express was that these so-called advanced people are without libido. Here they are talking about war and their careers and not looking at each other at all. It is sublimated because they are fascists. This goes a long way toward explaining why everyone was able to keep their eyes up here during the soapy scene. It was all part of Verhoeven's grand satire of fascism.
If you decide to pick up Robin A. Heinlein's novel Starship Troopers because you enjoyed Paul Verhoeven's movie version, you might be disappointed, and vice versa. These are the biggest distinctions between the 1959 book and its film adaptation. To this day, some film critics and audiences still don't quite get Starship Troopers, sometimes taking it for genuine pro-military propaganda when in fact it's tongue-in-cheek satire. Labeled one of the most misunderstood movies ever by The Atlantic, it seems that many failed to notice how the film's comically exaggerated style was poking fun at the ridiculous nature of fascist authoritarianism, rather than condoning it.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part too.
However, some of the confusion is a little more understandable when one is more acquainted with the book, which is wildly different in tone and has a more sincere pro-military message. For those familiar with the movie, it might raise an eyebrow to learn that combat action only plays a small role in the Starship Troopers book. Author Robert A. Heinlein was much more interested in discussion of moral philosophy, critiques of early 20th century liberalism, individual rights, and responsibility to the collective. The book is also filled to the brim with detailed explorations of the command structure and tactics of the mobile infantry, making it often feel like a technical manual. But the book is indeed overtly political. The bugs are described in no uncertain terms as representing communism, and several key passages muse on the benefits of authoritarianism over a free democracy.
You're using force, and force, my friends, is violence, the supreme authority from which all other authority is derived.
Though some critics didn't see it at the time, Starship Troopers the film was an attempt by director Paul Verhoeven to criticize Heinlein's belief in a government ostensibly run by the military. For those reading the book for its right-wing political message, the film's clear satire likely ruffled more than a few feathers, assuming they noticed it at all. In Paul Verhoeven's 1997 film, the romantic love quadrangle involving Rico, Carmen, Dizzy, and Xander sits at the center of the story. You could argue that the movie is as much about Rico's attempt to find love as it is about Earth's battle with a race of interstellar insects. But in the original novel, there's no such romance to speak of. The four-sided love affair among the young heartthrobs was entirely invented for the film.
Don't get any ideas about my girlfriend. All is fair in love and war.
In fact, the character of Xander doesn't exist in the original text, while Carmen is mentioned only a handful of times. Dizzy, meanwhile, only appears on a single page, and he's dead when he first appears. Yes, you heard that correctly. In the novel, Dizzy Flores is a man. He's a compatriot of Rico's in the mobile infantry, who buys it before the story has barely begun. As for Rico, his relationship with Carmen is more like an unrequited schoolboy crush than anything else. Carmen is described as a woman who will never settle down and is happy to play the field, and they're merely good friends. In the film, it's quite the opposite, as Rico and Carmen's relationship is a major plot point. It motivates him for much of the story, while their breakup makes him rethink his service entirely. In the book, it's a court-martial of another soldier in boot camp that makes Rico reassess his decision. Carmen only re-enters the story much later, when they catch up while on leave, and Rico is surprised to see her with a shaved head. Over the years, Starship Troopers has built a fervent fan following for its thrilling space marine action. But while the movie spends less than 20 minutes in boot camp training for the mobile infantry and more than an hour at war with the arachnids, it's actually the reverse in the book. More than half of the novel is set during Rico's time in training, and it covers with great detail his journey from fresh-faced recruit to hardened soldier. His instructor Zim is one of the few major characters in the book. Compare the movie with the book and you'll find that many of the boot camp scenes from Heinlein's novel are translated into the film, including Zim challenging new recruits to a fight and a soldier questioning him on why they need to learn to use a knife. But these sequences play out very differently in the book, where they often spark lengthy philosophical discussions on the nature of war and power. We get far more insight into Rico's personal journey, the importance his service holds to him, and the camaraderie he feels towards his fellow soldiers. When the war does break out, it's not nearly as dramatic in the book. It happens mostly off-page, with Rico simply remarking that Earth had gone from peacetime to state of emergency to war while he had been in training. In Starship Troopers, the Arachnids are an unstoppable foe, a race of primitive insect warriors that can tear through an entire Earth army with ease. They're a species that humans are intimately familiar with. Rico and his classmates dissect them in school, and the news footage tells us there has been a fragile peace for years. But it's also hinted at more than once that their attack on Buenos Aires, the strike that triggers the war, was actually in response to human intrusion. The bugs we meet in Heinlein's book, however, are markedly different. In addition to being more human-sized, they're also known to be highly intelligent and technologically advanced. They use traditional sci-fi weapons like laser rifles with their own starships and even cities on their home planet of Klendathu. When they strike Buenos Aires, it's a clear act of aggression. And there's never any suggestion that the Terran Federation might have in any way provoked a retaliatory assault. The bugs are evil, they are the enemy, they are a dangerous hive mind, hence the communist allegory, and they are a clear and present mortal threat to all human life.
You don't approve? Well, too bad. We're in this for the species, boys and girls. It's simple numbers. They have more.
It's even said in the book that bugs can breed faster than the mobile infantry can kill them, able to produce new soldiers almost on a whim. Like in the movie, their soldiers are near mindless workers, taking instruction from the brain bugs that lurk beneath the surface of the planet. In one of the most notable changes from the novel, the movie version of Starship Troopers eliminated a key component of the Space Marine tech, their hulking mech suits. A signature element of the book, these suits encase each soldier like a mobile tank, and much of the novel goes into lengthy detail about their capabilities, benefits, and drawbacks. They're such a major part of the story that they appear on the cover of several editions of the novel that have been published over the years. In addition, Rico and his fellow roughnecks don't just arrive planetside on a simple dropship, pouring out of their landing craft like they're storming the beaches of Normandy. Instead, they drop from the sky in their mechs like rain, inside giant capsules that crack open on impact. These techno-capsules protect mobile infantry soldiers from incoming enemy fire. And of course, plenty of time is spent in the book discussing their function and hammering home the dangers of each drop. In other adaptations of the book, including a 6-part anime from 1988, the mech suits play an integral role. They also show up in role-playing games and a 2012 CGI animated movie. Given their large role in the novel and importance to the story, the lack of the armored suits in the movie is a big reason why fans of the book sometimes struggle to enjoy the film. One of the weirder elements in Starship Troopers, a movie already packed with weirdness, is the presence of psychic powers. We first learn of them through Rico's friend Carl Jenkins, when he plays a special card game with Rico meant to detect latent psychic abilities. Carl's powers allow him to read the thoughts of non-humans and even implant suggestions in their minds.
Don't be afraid. Can't do human. Yet.
Towards the climax, though, after Carl has spent some time working with military intelligence, it's even hinted that Carl has mastered the ability to use his powers on people too. But in the novel, there are no characters who possess any kind of psychic abilities or mind-reading powers whatsoever. Certainly not Carl, who plays only a very tiny role in the story. It would seem that the psychic abilities were invented for the film, perhaps as a way of allowing the audience to understand the arachnid state of mind in the ironic ending. However, the movie doesn't completely conjure them up out of nowhere. In the book, there's a special branch of the military, a highly trained division of the logistics and communications group called simply Special Talents. Though they're not said to have any superhuman powers, their agents are described as so extraordinarily gifted that it borders on what Rico calls black magic. Much has been written about how Heinlein Starship Troopers outline the author's own strongly held libertarian beliefs in a military-run, authoritarian government that rejected 20th century ideals. Perhaps nowhere in the novel was this more laid bare than in the character of Emilio Rico, Johnny's father. Like their film counterparts, Johnny Rico's parents are firmly against his decision to enlist. They're staunchly anti-military, and his father, who goes unnamed in the movie, forbids him to join the service.
Well, you're not thinking of applying.
Have you lost your mind? I'd rather take 10 lashes in public square than see you ruin your life.
This mirrors some initial scenes in the book, but from there the story diverges. Firstly, the Rico family doesn't live in Buenos Aires, which becomes important later on. When the attack on Buenos Aires occurs, it's only Johnny's mother who's there, apparently on vacation alone. Johnny's father is more openly representative of liberal politics in the book, but when the bugs attack, he has a crisis of conscience that leads him to reevaluate his entire belief system. Ultimately, not only does Emilio Rico become firmly pro-authoritarian, but he even enlists in the mobile infantry himself. Later in the story, with the war raging, and now Sergeant Johnny Rico encounters his father while transferring to a new ship. In the film, both of Johnny's parents are killed at the same time by the meteor attack, which is what motivates him to remain in the service.
I'm from Buenos Aires, and I say kill them all!
The broad timeline in Starship Troopers remains mostly the same from the book to the movie, with Rico joining the service training before the arachnids attack Earth. After that, the mobile infantry are sent in to capture a brain bug in their efforts to wipe out the enemy. Of course, there are plenty of changes in the story too, most of which come in the form of the story's main characters. In addition to Dizzy Flores being a male soldier and Carl not being a psychic, the most evident change is in Lieutenant Radjack, the tough-as-nails commander played by Michael Ironside in the film. In the movie, Ironside plays a combination of two different book characters, the combat leader of Rico's fighting force, Lieutenant Radjack, and Mr. Dubois, his high school history and moral philosophy teacher. Dubois plays a special role in the novel, as a letter he writes is what inspires Rico to stay in the military. Meanwhile, Book Radjack is simply the leader of the Roughnecks, known to the troops only as the lieutenant. He appears only briefly, but his death is a major blow to the squad. Even after his passing, the soldiers continue to refer to the new lieutenant by his old rank, and behave as if Radjack is still their leader. But that's a far cry from what happens in the movie when Johnny Rico takes over.
Welcome to the Roughnecks.
Rico's Roughnecks!
We promise we're not making this one up. In Heinlein's original Starship Troopers, in addition to giant killer bugs and towering mech suit-powered soldiers, there also exists a group of cybernetically enhanced, hyper-intelligent canines called Neo-Dogs. These canine corps members are important animal soldiers mutated from dog DNA. Not only are the Neo-Dogs super smart, apparently as intelligent as a human child, but they can even talk crudely. Though limited by their vocal capabilities, they are said to be able to articulate numerous human lingual sounds. And a well-trained Neo-Dog can learn a human's accent well enough to communicate with them. Beyond just being a soldier's best friend though, the relationship between the Neo-Dog and his human partner is extremely profound. As a military recruitment officer tells Rico when he's first applying for the service, if a canine soldier is killed in action, then Neo-Dog is put down. That's because the bond that's been engineered is so powerful that the animal would never be able to recover from the death of their human partner. And while humans don't receive the same death penalty should their Neo-Dog buy the farm, it can take months to years of intense treatment for soldiers to recover from the loss of their canine comrade. Though the movie completely ignores this element of the book, the Starship Troopers comics and role-playing games have made use of these soldier pups. When the Starship Troopers movie opens, we're given a civics lesson on the status of interstellar affairs. This includes the introduction to the Terran Federation, as well as an overview of Earth's galactic neighbors, the Arachnids. Humans and Arachnids have a long history of conflict, as we're told that they've been hurling asteroids at Earth for a while. Thankfully, Earth has powerful planetary defenses capable of stopping most attacks. What the movie doesn't include is another alien race from the books, a species not so kindly referred to as the Skinnies. They're called that because, as you might guess, they're tall, slender, humanoid aliens. They live on a civilized planet much like our own, and while they don't seem particularly aggressive, Earth is in the midst of an invasion of their world when the book begins. They're described as being belligerents in the war with the bugs, often feeding the enemy arachnids information that helps them in their war on Earth. Later in the war, the Skinnies seemingly switch sides, apparently providing intelligence on the bugs that aid in an assault on Planet P. Like the Neo-Dogs, the Skinnies also pop up in several Starship Troopers games outside of the movies, as well as the television series Roughnecks: The Starship Troopers Chronicles.
A slow-motion ballet of shattering spaceships, an army of arachnid warriors, and the surprising effect that wasn't CGI at all. Here's what Starship Troopers looks like when you strip away the special effects. Would you like to know more? Some of the biggest, most thrilling scenes in Starship Troopers saw the human heroes taking down the bugs. And one of the biggest is a moment during a pitched battle between the two forces that sees the mobile infantry under attack by a gigantic tanker bug. It's a massive insect the size of an 18-wheeler, and it seems nearly unstoppable. To finally put it down, Johnny Rico jumps off a ledge and onto its back. Once there, he blasts a small hole in its armor and tosses in a grenade that blows it to smithereens. To film this dramatic sequence required a mix of VFX, both practical and computer-generated, as well as some intense on-set stunt work. The latter was achieved by having actor Casper Van Dien jump from a real rock face, landing on a green foam mat below. Later, with the use of a CGI stand-in and close-up inserts of Rico, The entire sequence was assembled to make it look like the gung-ho former high school sports star was using his fancy football moves to deadly effect. Other portions of the scene required different kinds of special effects. A practical, full-scale version of the tanker bug's back was created for Johnny to stand on. The rig sat atop a large apparatus capable of moving the oversized bug prop back and forth. The shell was also recreated digitally later, and the two shots were seamlessly joined to make it appear as though Rico was riding atop a giant tanker bug, fighting for his life. The final part of Johnny Rico's takedown of the tanker bug sees him being thrown from its back and hiding behind the corpse of another arachnid. When the dust of the explosion settles, he stands up proudly in a hero moment, looking back at his troops and the audience as the bug burns behind him. Creating just this one simple shot was nearly as complicated as the entire sequence. First, a background plate was shot of actor Casper Van Dien, standing in front of a practical prop of a warrior bug carcass, complete with background extras. Then, the burning tanker bug was created in CGI and composited behind him. Many of the big action set pieces in Starship Troopers come on the arachnid planet of Klendathu. The invasion of the planet winds up being a botched mission and a total disaster for the Terran Federation. Filming Klendathu meant more than just a lot of blue screen, green screen, and CGI. It also required a full-scale set of a makeshift military outpost. Behind-the-scenes videos from the making of the film show the set while it was still under construction. Interestingly, a lot of the seemingly futuristic elements of the compound were actually made up of prefabricated buildings from a company called Sprung Structures, which offers high-performance, modular fabric buildings complete with furnishable interiors. These allow various industries to set up working spaces anywhere in the world quickly and efficiently, and have been used by companies like Tesla and FedEx, as well as for sound stages for TV shows Big Love and The Chosen. Aside from the army of CGI bugs, in fact, the entire set is practical, from the buildings to the desert surroundings. A behind-the-scenes video from Amalgamated Dynamics also shows that the carcasses of the bugs and people strewn about the place were meticulously sculpted and placed on the set. In a sci-fi movie as ambitious as Starship Troopers, you'd probably assume that most of the alien critters would be computer-generated creations, and you wouldn't be wrong. A lot of them are. Vast armies of CG arachnids were created digitally to fill the scenes of attacking bugs. But the main warrior bugs also had a working, motorized, full-size robotic puppet counterpart for certain scenes, including an early sequence that shows a bug lifting a human soldier with its massive mandibles. The animatronic was designed and built by VFX icon Phil Tippett, who had previously worked on Jurassic Park, while a company called Amalgamated Dynamics did the actual construction. And as Tippett told Cartoon Brew, their usage had a very specific purpose, saying, "Most of that centered around contact, like when you actually see a real person about to be chopped in half and the beak of a bug. You want to keep the computer graphics people off screen as much as possible, because they don't look so good." Having an actual, moving model certainly adds a sense of realism to the warrior bug scenes. What you don't see in the film, of course, are the robot's mini operators who control its movement.
And action!
Casper Van Dien isn't the only actor in Starship Troopers to get to play with some big CG bugs. His co-star, Neil Patrick Harris, who played military intelligence officer and psychic Carl Jenkins, also got in on the fun. The mix of human and CGI happens at the end of the movie, when Jenkins arrives in the aftermath of a major human victory. In a satirical twist ending, Jenkins probes the mind of the so-called brain bug and declares that it's afraid while throngs of soldiers cheer. Although a life-size model of the brain bug was used in earlier scenes, this one used a CGI creation, at least for the wide shots. Seen in some behind-the-scenes footage, the bug was portrayed on the set by a big green stand-in partially covered in black fabric. This temporary jury-rigged version would be later removed in post-production and replaced with the CGI bug whose head pulsates and whose body oozes slime. As its title implies, Starship Troopers is about more than just soldiers. It also has a good number of starships. While there was plenty of CGI employed to bring some of them to life, many of the outer space sequences involving ships, like Carmen's cruiser called the Roger Young, were filmed using custom-built models. One sequence involving dozens of starships under attack used models created by artisans at Sony's model shop Thunderstick, with George Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic, and a VFX studio called Boss. also lending a hand. Augmented with the use of some CG attack ships, 13-scale starships were created for the scene, and took a total of 14 months to assemble from start to finish. The scene, which sees chaos erupt when the fleet meet an unexpected attack from the bugs, required the VFX team to put together all of those ships, plus background elements. The CGI added later required an advanced computer software program, though even that could barely handle the task of compositing so many moving parts. Behind the scenes, the large models of the starships were dangled in front of a black backdrop to capture just one of the more than 200 individual elements. The large, empty warehouse space stands in stark contrast to the final scene, a frame buzzing with starships, explosions, and debris. During the incredible outer space action scenes, a full-size set was built of the interior of the Roger Young's cockpit, but for their forward view into space, which showed the horrific destruction of the Terran fleet, special digital effects were used, rather than any kind of rear projection or on-set photography. Instead, it was a standard green screen. It wasn't just the ships out the window that were CGI. The window itself was purely digital, as explained by Sony ImageWorks' Scott E. Anderson.
The flickering light on the windshield's actually put in digital.
That allowed the animators to add in subtle reflections of the chaos happening outside the ship, just like you'd see on real glass. For director Paul Verhoeven, getting the moving lights just right was like an orchestra, and crucial to making the scene convincing. Colored lamps were moved slowly from side to side to cast the right lighting on the physical set, and were replaced later by scenes of massive burning ships and explosive collisions. Amid the space battle above the bug planets, it's not just the Roger Young that's taking fire. Multiple massive starships are struck, splitting open and jettisoning crew into open space. Fiery debris from the entire fleet rains down as shuttles escape their motherships and try to stay alive in the frenzy. At least one of those wrecked vessels was created with elaborate model work. It's just one of many such ships built for the scene, and it's only when you see the whole model that you understand just how large the thing really is. Ultimately, the ship measured in at a whopping 18 feet and was built with removable sections to make the destruction scenes easier to shoot in stop motion later.
We also had 2 stop-motion animators who literally, frame by frame, as the ship pulled apart, bent the metal pieces of the decks.
It's mind-boggling how much work went into each model, with astonishing levels of detail to convince audiences that this was a massive starship cut in two by the enemy. The Roger Young isn't the only starship piloted by Carmen. After that ship is destroyed, she also gets behind the controls of an escape shuttle, a sequence which required a couple different moments of CGI. When Carmen and Xander reach the shuttle bay, the pod they actually get into is real, while the rest of the pods were added in post-production.
We only had the first part of the set, and the second of the part of the set, further away in the background, was added later.
As with the larger starship, a green screen is also used to make room for computer-generated images of outer space beyond the windows of the shuttle. Footage from filming the scene shows actress Denise Richards sitting in the cockpit with her headgear on, and a green screen out the window of the small vessel. As described by Paul Verhoeven, the crash and destruction of the Roger Young was crafted in CGI and placed in the background of this very shot.
The foreground was shot on a gimbal. That's where you get all the trembling and the strange positions of this thing.
These active movements help give the scene a rocky, unsteady look as Carmen pilots the shuttle away from the destruction. There are some tense moments in the finale of Starship Troopers, and one of the most nail-biting is when Carmen is captured by the bugs. Finding herself trapped underground, where she's due to become food for them, she fails to save her new love Xander, who has his head stabbed and empty out by the brain bug. She is, however, able to save herself. But if you were on the set of the film the day that scene was shot, you would have seen something very different than what ended up on the screen. Showing up in more behind-the-scenes footage is the moment where Carmen faces off against one of the bugs. But for the close-up shots of her face, she was actually staring down director Paul Verhoeven while he shouted and held a broom over his head. For shots involving the full bug, he'd be substituted for the full-size puppet of the brain bug, or a CGI model, depending on the shot. Meanwhile, Xander's death was pretty much filmed as it ultimately appeared on screen. Production built several models of actor Patrick Muldoon's head to sub in for progressively horrifying shots as the brain bug sucked out his brains. All of this was done in a sprawling indoor set of subterranean insect caves that was built for the film. All these practical on-screen elements just prove how much work went into bringing Starship Troopers to life, and are part of the reason the film holds up so well after all these years. Using CGI with a light touch to augment the practical effects rather than always replace them outright means that every piece of the action feels all the more real to the audience. Yeah, even a giant oozing brain-shaped bug.
And strike. Ooh.